I'd been working in that building for almost a year. Nothing really happened. Most nights were quiet, sometimes very quiet. I was a night watchman in an old office complex just outside the city. 3 floors, completely empty after 9 p.m. The first few months were uneventful. I swept the floors, emptied the trash cans, and refilled the soap dispensers. The same routine every night. After dark, the building somehow seemed larger. The corridors seemed longer. The shadows were longer than they should have been. The lights flickered occasionally, but that was normal. Old building, old wiring. Everything seemed routine, safe, or at least that's what I told myself. Around 11 a.m. on Tuesday, I was finishing the 3rd floor. One of the lights in the conference room was off. That caught my attention because I remembered checking it earlier. I opened the door. Empty. Just chairs, a long table, and the faint smell of cleaning chemicals mingling with the old carpet. Everything was in its place. I shrugged and continued. I went down to the basement around 1 a.m. It was colder there. The faint hum of the fluorescent lights made the room feel unsettling, as if it were never completely silent. That's when I heard about it. A soft, scraping sound. I stopped and listened. Nothing moved. I told myself it was coming from the pipes. Old buildings always make noise. I went back to work, but every few minutes I thought I heard it again. Scrape, boot, undetectable. Too deliberate to ignore. Around 2 a.m., weariness began to creep in, the kind of weariness that makes every sound feel louder than it should. For a moment, I sat on the basement stairs, staring out at the empty hallway, and then I noticed something moved at the far end of the corridor. A shadow. It wasn't human. It wasn't something I could explain. It wasn't walking. It was gliding. I blinked. There was nothing. I looked again. The shadow had returned. This time it was closer. It moved slowly. I froze completely, barely breathing. It stopped in the middle of the corridor. Nothing else has changed. The lights weren't flickering. There was no sound. Just silence. I tried to make sense of it. A play of light. Exhaustion. My imagination going wild. That's what I told myself. At 3 o'clock, I forced myself to finish the top floor. The building felt different now. Wider, taller. Each step echoed louder than before. As I walked past the main office, I noticed papers scattered on the floor. I'd never seen them before. And then I saw them again. Shadow was standing at the corner of the corridor, moveless, dark, taller than me, waiting, watching. I whispered to myself, "Just ignore it. Finish your shift." My shift ended at 4 o'clock. I walked towards the elevator, being careful not to look at the corners of the corridor. The shadow didn't follow me. At least, I guess it didn't. Outside, the parking lot was empty. My car stood alone under the buzzing lights. I got in and locked the doors. That's when I saw the footprints, single, clear, perfectly shaped in the dust. They stretched straight up to my driver's side door. Then it stopped. There was no mud. There was no dampness. It was just there. I immediately walked away. I never went back to that building. Months later, I moved into a small apartment, and sometimes, late at night, I hear faint scraping sounds in the hallway outside. I tell myself it's just pipes, but every now and then I catch a glimpse of a shadow in the corner of my eye, and it looks just like it did in that building. After I moved to the apartment, I tried to forget everything that happened. I told myself it was stress. long nights, an empty building playing tricks on my mind. For a while, it worked. The apartment was small, quiet, and ordinary. Nothing like that office complex. But silence has a way of revealing things. The first strange thing happened about 2 weeks later. I woke up around 2:30 a.m. for no clear reason, no nightmare, no noise, just the feeling that something had changed. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening. That's when I heard it. A soft sound, almost gentle, a scrape, coming from the hallway outside my apartment door. I held my breath. The sound stopped. I waited. Minutes passed. Nothing else happened. Eventually, I fell back asleep. The next morning, I told myself it was the pipes again. Old building, same excuse. But that night, I left my shoes outside the door. I don't know why. Maybe I just wanted proof that nothing was wrong. When I woke up, one of them had moved, just slightly, turned inward toward my door. I stood there for a long time, staring at it. Then I picked it up and went to work. A few nights later, I noticed the hallway light turning on by itself. It was motion activated. It shouldn't turn on unless someone was there. I opened my door slowly. The hallway was empty. The light stayed on for a few seconds, then turned off again. That's when the scraping started to feel familiar. Not louder, not more aggressive, just consistent. Always late at night, always slow, like something moving carefully. One night, I stayed awake on purpose. I sat on the edge of my bed watching the door, listening. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the sound returned. Scrape, pause, scrape. It stopped right outside my door. I could feel it, the way you feel someone standing too close, even without seeing them. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Minutes passed. Then the sound moved away, slowly, down the hallway. The next morning, there was a mark on the floor. Not a footprint, not exactly, just a faint outline in the dust, as if something had stood there for a long time, waiting. After that, I stopped sleeping at night. I left lights on. I kept the TV running quietly, but the scraping still came. Always softer when the lights were on, always clearer when everything was quiet. One night, I heard it inside the apartment, behind me. I didn't turn around. I already knew what I would see. Instead, I closed my eyes and waited. The sound moved past me, toward the far wall, then nothing. The next day, I packed my things. I didn't tell the landlord. I didn't explain. I left the apartment before nightfall. Now I live somewhere else, another city, another building. Most nights are quiet, but sometimes, when everything goes silent, when there's no traffic, no wind, no sound at all, I hear it again, a soft, scraping noise, careful, patient, just outside my door.